Hello, friends. Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm LD Madera, and welcome to another episode of Improv and Magic. We're well into the holiday season, and I hope your holiday is turning out to be happy and merry. I'm super excited to have with us today a true icon in the world of improv. He's the legendary Matt Besser. Matt is a founding member of the iconic sketch comedy troupe, the Upright Citizens Brigade, and co-founded the renowned UCB Theater and Training Center, which has launched the careers of many household names in comedy and writing. With a career spanning over 3 decades, Matt has made a name for himself as an actor, director, producer, and writer. And he's also known for his work on various TV shows like Modern Family and Parks and Recreation. Matt is also host of one of the most popular comedy podcasts, Improv for Humans, which is a comedy platform dedicated to presenting the very best improv comedy and teaching the craft. It was great talking to Matt. We share an open dialogue about improv, sketch comedy, and some of the valuable lessons learned in this wonderful craft. I certainly hope you enjoy this episode, my friends. There's so much to learn here. Here now is my guest, Matt Besser. My friends, I'm very happy and excited to have with me right now on Improv and Magic. He's amazing. He's the one and only Mr. Matt Besser. Hello, Matt. How are you doing today?
Hello. I'm very well. I told you before we started, I enjoy talking about improv. So I'm glad you have a show like this.
I really love looking at all the stuff that you have behind you on your wall. It looks like you have a great myriad of collectibles.
Well, it's mostly CDs, which is a forgotten item you can find at garage sales now or underneath cold drinks. And then hats that I wear to support my Razorbacks. But yeah, it's a big mess behind me. Thank you.
I have a really good friend of mine, my best friend who lives in LA, and he still collects DVDs. He still likes to have physical media. Are you still a big fan of having physical media?
Well, yeah, for so many reasons. One, I can, it's at least once a day I'm trying to stream something and it's just not working for me. And more close to home, the Upright Citizens Brigade television show, 3 seasons on Comedy Central, was erased by Paramount Plus like 3 weeks ago, along with all their other content of MTV and Comedy Central through the years. So that was heartbreaking. And to know that, your digital presence is just gone. So it makes you believe in things you can hold in your hands.
I love that. I love that so much. Well, I want to learn all about you, Matt. So why don't we start at the beginning with you? Where did you grow up and what was growing up like for you?
I grew up in Little Rock, Arkansas. What was it like for me? I don't know. It's pretty easy. I had 2 loving parents. What else? I love the Razorbacks. I mentioned that. It was a pretty good life, Little Rock, Arkansas.
Were you always a Razorbacks fan?
Mm-hmm. That's something my dad and I bonded with. We fished together, and that was mostly it.
Was there anything about you when you were a kid that made you interested in being a performer?
No, I think in growing up at that time, pre-internet, in that part of the country, it didn't even seem like a reality. So that didn't even occur to me. And I wasn't shy with my friends, but I think I was shy to like adults. So it didn't seem like a path. And even like once at an amusement park, my brother and I, some clown was like, get up on stage to me. And I didn't want to get up on stage, but my brother did. And it surprised my parents when I finally did get into it. I was very much into comedy, like Monty Python and Steve Martin, and eventually Kids in the Hall. But I didn't really think it was a possibility until I was into college that that could be something I could actually do myself. So, it's just like I thought I'd go into advertising or something like that. This is honestly is what I thought I'd do as a profession, just because that was something that was creative and you could be funny, but that's the only path I foreseeably saw probably until I reached college.
What was it about Monty Python, which I also love, that really resonated with you? I know a lot of people like Monty Python for different reasons. What was it about that for you that really struck a chord with you?
Uh I don't know. I mean, for one, like versus what? There just wasn't much sketch comedy period. So just to have a sketch comedy show at all. I mean, and of course and it also happens to be genius. So just well written, the way that, in retrospect, you can go, I love the way the scenes went into each other. But at that point, I didn't know anything else. So it wasn't like it seemed innovative. It was the first thing I'd ever seen. So it seemed like that's what a sketch show was. And it was like that, SCTV or SNL. And I think I liked them all equally. And I didn't go, I think at some point, some kids snob out and like, Monty Python's better than SNL or whatever. But I just saw them all as different flavors of different sketch shows and probably fell in love with each one of them in different ways. SCTV was also equally as genius, and I liked the way they had a home base that they always and characters that they always returned to. That was very, I was about to say innovative, but then again, they're one of the first sketch shows. So how can you innovate when you're starting it? But also Del Close helped on a lot of those shows, who ended up being a mentor of mine, but I only knew that after the fact. So that was just happenstance. But I loved all three of those sketch shows. And I did not like Laugh In per se, which was another kind of sketch show, which was kind of stupid and jokey. I did like Carol Burnett, but I associated that more with my childhood and those other ones with my teen years.
I remember back in the day, sketch was just on the verge of getting popular, and now you see sketch comedy almost everywhere. I don't think there's any comedy theater that doesn't have a sketch show of some way, shape, or form.
But there's not much on TV, is there? Like right now, what sketch show is being produced?
Well, I mean, in terms of like, live theater.
Okay, but when I was saying before, just to push back a little, I wasn't saying like there was a lot of sketch out in the world back in the 50s and 60s. It's just like what was on TV. And if you look at the history of what's on how many sketch shows on at the same time on TV, it's an interesting, it'd be an interesting bar graph because sometimes there's nothing on. And like right now, I think we're at nothing. I can't think of one that is presently being produced. I know Nick Kroll had the Mel Brooks History of the World Part 4 or something, right? Wasn't that what it was?
Yeah.
And then there was the Black Lady sketch show. I can't remember another one in even recent history, right? So it's kind of like, yeah, it might be on stage right now, but we're in a sad times at the professional produce it level, produce it and film it level. So I don't know. I'm not going to agree that there's more now, more than ever. I don't think that's true. I think it goes in waves. Um, when we got on the air, it was right after Kids in the Hall, and it was pretty much Kids in the Hall. When Kids in the Hall were on, it was Kids in the Hall and SNL. I can't think of another sketch show that was being produced then. And then they influenced a lot of people like me and the state and then the Mr. Show. And so a lot of my contemporaries, there was a nice wave there of like 4 or 5 sketch shows, and some didn't last, but they definitely, when Comedy Central started, if that bar graph I'm talking about, that would have been, there were a lot of shows on. There were like, at some point, I bet there were like 8 sketch shows being produced between MTV and Comedy Central and HBO. Those were some golden years. But then I think they went out of style again, and now it's a desert. So, yes, God bless that it is still on the stage and people just love sketch and will keep it alive, like they've kept improv alive on the stage, whether or not it's on TV or not. But I'd have to say it's sad times for sketch. And I guess if you're like, well, sketch is on TikTok, old man, it's not on streaming anymore. It's on YouTube, you old man. All right. But the level I see on there, I don't know if I put it in this. I don't know if I put a lot of TikTok videos in the same level as an episode of Kids in the Hall or Monty Python. Is
I agree with that. There is a lot of stuff that gets put on YouTube and TikTok. And I've seen some sketches on TikTok and YouTube, but I don't get that same feeling as watching something else on TV. What do you think it is that changed everything for sketch? Where now, if you want to see a sketch show, you really got to go and search and find it, and it's barely anywhere on TV anymore.
well, TV comedy is a sad state of affairs on TV in general, or whatever we're going to call TV. I'll call TV what. When I say TV, I guess I mean it's getting produced at a high level. Like, is Paramount Plus TV, is Amazon TV? I guess in my head it is. That's what I call TV now. So I'm really scanning through them in my head, and also the UK is a whole other ball of wax. Their graph would be much more impressive than ours. Their output of sketch comedy through the years, and but they also do much short. They don't do as many seasons as a show as we do here, so it's differences. But I to answer your question, it's a sad state of affairs for comedy professionally, but I think there'll always be someone, just like there's always going to be someone who wants to play guitar, and will find someone else that still likes the guitar sound even when it's not popular, and will say, let's do some sketches, and they'll do something, they'll do it a little bit different, and they'll get word of mouth, and then someone will say this should be produced. So, and I think that's why things go in waves. They get popular, it gets oversaturated, it's not as popular, it goes away, then someone does something really innovative and it starts again. So that's my hope. So I don't want to be like totally negative, like sketch is over. I do think it just someone will do something interesting again.
Well, what do you think it would take for sketch to boom once again and to be popular in 2024 and onwards?
Well, it's not going to happen with someone just pitching an idea to a studio. So they probably already are doing it and I'm not aware of it. But I guess where I'm being snobby about what I see on YouTube and TikTok is they don't have the means to make, to produce it on the level of what I want to see the sketch comedy. And maybe I have an old man head and it's like, well, we don't need comedy produced on that level anymore, old man. And maybe I'm out of it. I don't get that. But if it's a real sketch show, I guess I want it to be a half hour long. And maybe that's another stupid thing of holding on to times like that. Like sketch needs to be a half hour. But besides what I already said of someone just loving it and being innovative. I guess it's just tenacity and putting it out there because they do love it. And uh, eventually they'll either find a way to monetize it where they're their own thing, or someone like Amazon will go, you know what, let's make a sketch comedy show.
I don't think it's crazy what you suggested because I feel like now there's so much on social media in general where it's all about that 1 minute sketch now or that 30-second sketch. And I guess there's good to it, but I guess for me personally, I'm not sure if I'm really able to follow a sketch that's just done at a rapid, quick fire pace the way you see it on social media. Would you agree? Do you kind of feel the same
I gotta
way?
be honest, I don't watch it. I don't have TikTok. Maybe that's a good thing. And I don't find myself watching. Someone would really have to tell me to watch it. I'm certainly not looking for it. So I can't honestly. I can't. I'm not going to be that guy to judge something I don't watch. But I know I will watch it as soon as it's a sketch show, and this is the guy that needs to still buy CDs and DVDs. So there you go.
Okay, fair enough. So, how did you encounter improv?
Well, I moved to Chicago to do stand up in the 1990 basically, and that was in the another wave, the stand up wave. It was at the end of the 80s, big popularity of stand up, and there were many clubs in Chicago, dozens. Literally dozens. Just in the city itself there were a dozen, in the suburbs there's probably another dozen. So there were so many places to do stand up the year I moved there. And then it pretty much went bust right about then, right about the year. So all these clubs started closing just because I moved there. No. And I didn't even know what improv was. I I probably had heard it in reference to jazz, but I didn't, and I'd heard of Second City because of SCTV, but I didn't know the concept of give us a suggestion and we're going to do a scene. I didn't even know that to be a thing. And then I went to Second City and they did that as a set, and improv as a set after their sketch. And I wasn't blown away by that, to be honest, but it was my first taste of it. I was like, oh, okay. And then of course I'm just hearing about it everywhere because it was the staple of the city. And then I heard about Improv Olympic, and then I went and saw a Herald show with this group Blue Velveeta and some other groups, and Farley was there, and Tim Meadows and Dave Keckner. So I was fortunate to be there on a night with a bunch of who would be legends in comedy eventually, but it was a lot of talent on stage. And this group, Blue Velveeta in particular, did an amazing Herald, and I'd never seen anything like it. I'd never seen a half hour from one word, and I thought they had cheated and had done stuff they'd done before, and I was obviously wrong. And I had to talk to them afterwards, and then I had to take classes. So that was without question it. But it went from total not knowing at all about the form to being smitten with this one performance and having to learn how they did it.
So, when you started taking classes, what were some of the things that really resonated with you as you were learning on how to improvise?
Um, well, it was, the lessons come, they don't all come at once. They come, sometimes it'll take a year to learn a simple concept because you don't get it. And then all of a sudden you do. So, I could track you through every single improv concept that I learned, but playing at the top of your intelligence is a big one to delve close. And it took a while to understand what that truly meant. And it did take a while. But once I got it and my group got it, it was a whole different ball game. And it also, another easy note you hear, but you doesn't mean you actually understand it, is listening. You got to listen. It's like, okay, I'll listen, but it it took me, I feel like, a year and a half to completely understand what that means, um, and how to use listening to find the game of the scene. And the concept of finding the game of the scene, it wasn't, I don't think it was put that way at that point, but I think together our group, the family, kind of, without words, figured out that. And when we figured that out, it was, improv was very easy after that. But it wasn't something you just hear from a teacher. You do a couple exercises and you're like, okay, I get it and I'm great. It's like sometimes you think you get it and you don't. I know I sound like I'm talking about LSD or something, but it took my group. Sometimes you're trying too hard, or you're forcing it, or you're not, you're listening to the words but not to the intent, things like that, eventually it clicks. You're like, oh my God, I was trying to force the bicycle along and it was coasting the entire time. I could have just enjoyed the ride.
I think there are a lot of people who, when they start getting their first crack at improv, they do try hard a lot. And for some people, they never really get out of that. Why do you think a lot of people tend to try way too hard when they do improv?
Well, I guess there's different ways to try hard, and I don't want to be misunderstood. Like rehearsing a lot and paying attention in class, that's a good try hard. I'm talking about, like, maybe those aren't the words I want to use either. It's more trying to force the funny, trying to push the funny instead of trying to understand that the first thing we're trying to do on stage is just let people know, here's a part of life, a human dynamic of life you probably recognize. And they go, oh, yeah, it is something I recognize from life. And then you find the part of it that you're going to focus on and amplify and go, and isn't this a funny part of life? And we're going to show you why it's funny by just amplifying this one thing. Um, so that it took me a while to get to that. And I think I was listening to the rest of the rules, and there's a lot of rules out there I don't agree with. And I think those can obfuscate the better rules. But that's why they're different philosophies, and you got to find the ones that work for you ultimately. But I was also going through a lot of different schools with different philosophies, thinking that they were all the same, and that can also be confusing if you're trying to do the same thing but you're doing it three different ways at once. I don't think that was not working for me. So I had to at some point, back to just saying, like, playing at the top of your intelligence. That was a phrase that every school used and a lot of teachers talked about. But it wasn't until I heard Dell explain it that I was like, oh, now I get it. And some of the teachers were absolutely saying the wrong thing, in my opinion. And you can't say a phrase or a word has, you can't say it has three definitions and say if those definitions are all different, and have that be helpful to you at improv. That's confusing. And it took getting to Dell, who is also very straightforward to the point. A lot of people thought he was mean, but I just felt like, no, he's cutting through the shit and he's telling us, he's really, now I understand it, because he's giving me real reasons and telling me those other reasons are wrong. He's not just going, yeah, it's whatever. Yeah, there's many different ways to look at playing the top of your intelligence. Like, well, if you look at it many different ways, you're probably not going to be focused. And if he saw that in a scene, he would stop the scene and go, "Stop, no." And the easiest thing he could teach us, he taught us many things, but was like, is this how you would behave if you were in this scenario? Because right now you just seem like a fool, a caricature of a human, not a human. And if you're a caricature up there, it's really hard to make fun of the dynamics of humans if you're coming off so broad, and that goes back to the forcing it. Like, people think like, I can't just go up there and act normal. I gotta go, "Hey, I'm the mayor," and talk in this way that you never talk, you know? So there's many lessons to be learned. I'm not sure what order I learned them, but I think I just went through some of the big ones that you think you understand it, but then it takes a while. And for me, it did take a mentor like Dell just telling me when I wasn't doing it right, and not being over coddling, which was what I was getting from some other teachers at the time of like, "Yeah, you did great up there, next." And it's like, well, no, I didn't do great. And I was lost. And I was acting like a fool, and you should have told me. And, it, eventually you look back at some of your early stuff. You're like, yeah, I was up there being like a child, and that's fine if that's what you're trying to get out of improv class. No judgment. If that's what you are, you're like, you know what? I want to take 3 hours every week and just not worry about the world, get on stage, run around like a child. That's fine. But eventually, if you're going to be in front of an audience, paying customers, I don't think they want to watch you run around like a child. I think they would rather you start every scene in some kind of grounded way. Even if you're playing a pirate or a space alien, you can still start in a grounded way that allows you to find the scene. And it took me a long time to get that. Like, it took me a long time to answer your question.
There's a style of improv that I see a lot these days, especially when you go to various festivals. And I kind of refer to it as frat house improv. And it's a style where you just see people just running on stage and, like you said, just bouncing off the walls and screaming at the audience, "Hey, we're going to do some improv for you." And I feel like for some reason, a lot of people think that that's what they have to do in order to get the audience engaged. I don't particularly think so, but how do you feel about the fact that nowadays you see a lot of quote unquote frat house improv?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know exactly what you're talking about. Like, I think you can have a totally high energy show, and you can be yelling and have a really smart, good improv show. So I don't want to knock high energy, but I'm more about the style of the actual improv. So if you are tagging into a scene and the reason you're getting a laugh is how loud you are, then I don't, to me, that scene's going to peter out. Or it's going to be the type of scene you want to do, the type of scene that you can describe to someone and they go, "Oh, you should write that up. That should be a sketch." You don't want to describe it and they go, "Oh, I guess I had to be there." Because if you had to be there, that's the one where the audience might have been laughing for all the wrong reasons. They're just laughing for the high energy and the high spirits. And again, there's nothing wrong with that if everyone was having a good time. But eventually, you probably want to aim for more, and it is more satisfying to get off stage and go, "Oh man, we had." I always go back to this, but a lot of scenes that were so good they could have been written up. To me, that means you did them well, and that audience will talk about it to their friends. They won't just enjoy it for the improv nature of it. they'll enjoy it for the comedy nature of it.
Do you get as much enjoyment from watching a short form show as you would watching a long form show?
Fuck no. I thought you knew about me.
I just had to ask.
Poking the bear. No, I mean, for real, did you think I was going to say yes, or did you already know my answer?
I already knew, but I just kind of wanted to
No, I don't.
open
And
that
when
door.
you say frat, that's what if literally a frat house was going to have an improv night, they do short form.
Yeah.
No, I felt like you were poking the bear, but I don't even put them in the same. I don't put them in the same classification of comedy. Even they both have the word improv, but you don't do them the same. And even if you're a listener out there that does short form, you're like, my team, we don't do the cheesy games. We do these games and we have really thoughtful scenes in our short form. If that's true, then you're doing long form. Because that's what I sometimes hear. I'm like, if you're doing a scene, that's long form. It doesn't have to last 30 minutes, right? You can do a long form that's a minute. Did you know that? Like long form can be a minute long. Do you know that? I'm asking.
I know that. Yeah.
Okay. I would say a lot of people don't know that. They think long and short has to do with the time. But no, it's just if I got a suggestion from you and I just do a scene, that's long form. It's when the rules of short form are the comedy. That's short form. When what's funny about the scene is being made by the rules of the short form game, that's short form. And to me, if your short form is making up the rules, to me, that's no fun and it's not satisfying. It's like going to fish at a stocked pond. It's like, okay, I'm catching fish, but they got like 500 trout in this 1 acre pond. How am I not going to catch a fish? Like, I don't feel proud. I don't feel like I made up the comedy. Now you got me riled up. But yeah, I feel like it's like, well, your game is what's getting the laughs, not you, buddy. And some people are better at whatever the rules are or the limitations, the parameters of the short form game. But to me, it's so what? Because we all know what's really happened is they're doing their bag of tricks and they're going back to jokes they've done before doing that short form game. I just, to me, it's like cheating. It's as impressive as Ray Gun was at the Olympics.
I think there are a lot of people who feel like they don't just want to do short form, they need to do short form because they feel like doing something that's a game that has some sort of gimmicks or quirky rules. For a lot of people, they feel like they need that safety net.
Well, look, if you're doing a show and it's for an audience and you're just starting out, let's say we're doing a bar show, that might be a really smart idea to start out the show. And that's what the Improv Olympic used to do. They might still do that with a little short form game. But the danger is that's all the audience will want after that. And they won't be patient with your long form. So, but I do see it like, I don't mind it to like, okay, we're just going to warm you guys up. But it's also dangerous, I believe, because it's a different form of comedy. It's a quick sugar high. I'd rather give them a really nice, instead of those throwing out sweet tarts, give them a nice peach cobbler I've been working on for the last 2 days with some good homemade ice cream, something I can be proud of. Not that I went to 7-Eleven and just bought, threw at them. I'll answer one question without an analogy today. At least I'm not doing sports analogies.
I'm actually a big fan of analogies. I especially appreciate a good food analogy. So you've definitely won my heart with
Empty
that.
calories.
Well, I won't poke the bear anymore. I promise you that.
Look, I'm also jealous. I'm envious. Short form 1 television. believe me. It was my lifelong goal to get asked. We got Ask Cat on TV a couple of times, but it was only like specials, one-offs. And meanwhile, Whose Line's still running. So short form won the won the war. But so that's part of my opinion is envy of that the greater audience couldn't have had a long form show that they loved as much as that one.
Well, of course, one thing that everyone also remembers about you is the fact that you were one of the founding members of UCB. How did that come together, and where did the idea come from to create UCB?
Well, we saw Kids in the Hall and we wanted to have a sketch show, and all these guys in the early 90s were all meeting around Improv Olympic. And I'm just going to take you through it real quick. But, we had many incarnations, and eventually Amy moved to town, and eventually we had Adam McKay, but he joined SNL, and then we moved to New York and we did lots of showcases, and that's it. But, we were part of we want to be the next Kids in the Hall generation, which I think a few sketch groups were.
Well, UCB definitely has continued on to this very day, and people still love it. People still remember it. There's a successful book out that UCB released. What do you think it is about UCB that really strikes a good chord with people?
Yeah, well, we the sketch show was on Comedy Central 98 to 2000, and it was also based on the Herald. That was our Monty Python spin. Was instead of a snake of connecting, we did the more of the Herald formation with the sketches. So that was our passion that we brought to New York, and people saw us doing this type of improv, and it wasn't really in New York, and we felt like we got to teach this, and that eventually led to we got to codify this and put it in a book, because that's basically what our curriculum is anyway. So to answer your question in a long way, I think the way we codified what we learned in Chicago, like we took what Dell and Sharn at the Improv Olympic had taught us, but we put words and phrases and made some of the concepts a little more clear, according to how we liked to do comedy and sketch and improv. And I think it was a lot more clear than the theaters and schools around us. So I think that's the popularity. I'd like to say it was because our sketch show is so great, but a lot of people, probably 95% of people, don't even know we had a sketch show. They assume that the theater was the first thing. But I think it was teaching what we learned and really focusing it down into a way that people were like, yeah, I do get this. And Dell did that for me too, as I was saying earlier. And we tried to do that even more. And that's the passion I continue. It's pretty much all I do now is improv for humans, and teaching improv for humans through my podcast. But that's everybody has their comedy focus and what interests them the most. And I guess what I took from Dell, and then we with UCB tried to focus. And I think so. To answer yourself, on the school side, I think it's that, and on the performance side, I would like to think it's the energy of the shows and the vibe of the theater, that made the popularity. Like there was another theater in New York when we arrived called Chicago City Limits, and it was so cheesy. It was so painfully cheesy. Um, it's like the type of place that will play Bon Jovi and Journey before the show. It's like, can you play some music from right now? Can you play? We're in the '90s, man. You know what I'm saying? Like it's there was a lot of corny comedy, and unbelievably more so in New York. Like you'd think New York's so hip, but and the stand-up scene was, but the sketch scene was not. It was painfully stuck in the corny '80s and the worst aspects of the '80s. So we brought, I guess, a however you want to put it, a better, more interesting Chicago vibe to New York in that way too. Did that answer your question?
I think it did. I feel satisfied with that answer. I feel like a lot of instructors have certain things or certain main goals that they try to get across to their students as far as improv methodologies or philosophies or what have you. For you, when you're teaching people how to do improv, what are some of the main things that you try to get across to students?
I think what I've already said today. I you got to be grounded. You got to start off a scene in a much more believable, relatable way. And I think people can go watch a show or listen to a improv podcast, and the part of the show or the podcast they remember is perhaps the end of the scene where everything's really heightening and really crazy, but it's earned that level of absurdity and heightening. It's it's been a good in a scene I enjoy. It's been a nice little stair steps up to that absurdity. But I think when a lot of people are starting, they just want to start at that level of absurdity and broadness and craziness. And maybe as a student of the craft, they should, when they're watching improv they should really listen to the start of scenes that work the best. And I bet those scenes are more grounded. So that's the lesson I constantly pound. And yeah, I do workshops at festivals and stuff. I don't teach class anymore, but I'll do one. And so I'll pretty much just do the same thing every time, which is someone will tell a story and then we'll talk about what was funny about that story. Let's break it down. And then we'll start a scene. I'll go, you show me with your first initiation line what you thought was funny about that story. Don't tell me right now, well, this is what I thought was funny about the monologue. Don't tell it to me like that. Be a character, show me a who, what, and where, and a initiation line that lets me know this was the part of the story I thought was funny and we could possibly pursue in a comedy scene. That's premise improv. That's saying that's not organic. Organic, you start out of nowhere. You don't need a story. But that's another kind of great improv. But that's not what I work on. I work on what I think is a little easier, which is let's hear something funny, let's coalesce it, and then let's start a scene. And then people they'll get up on stage, they'll say their first line, they'll go freeze. And I'll say to class, what part of the monologue did they think was funny? And everyone will go through, well, I think she thought this part. Well, I think she thought this part. And then I'll ask that performer, what part was it? And if no one was right, guess what? They didn't make themselves clear enough. And we didn't get all the value we could have because there's still going to be confusion at the top of that scene of how we were inspired by that opening monologue. And if I, your partner, don't know, then maybe we've wasted the comedy that we were already given with the monologue, right? So I want to get them in a place where they do know. So I'll say, try again. Try another initiation. I want it to be that same part of the monologue that you thought is funny, but you need to try another approach or have your first line reveal more. And by the way, in practice, I think it can be in like the first 3 lines, but for the sake of, a drill, I'll say, try it again, and then we'll go through it again. What part? So, and soon they'll realize the kind of clues they have to give. And sometimes it'll be too on the nose, and sometimes it's not enough. But I think eventually you find that middle ground where you're saying, I thought that was really funny, and this will be an enjoyable route to go down by me starting here. This part of the monologue. That's the subtext of your initiation line. And I think once you have a group that has good ensemble together and are used to playing with one another, you don't necessarily have to get it all out in one breath in one line, because people have more patience and can ease their way into a scene more, right? Like with the UCB or with my improv group, The Family, or on Improv for Humans with any regulars or ASCAT, I knew I could go out there and say, or at least I also knew people I couldn't do it with, but with most performers, I could say one line just to set the who, what, where before I said what I thought was interesting. And you'll hear that on Improv for Humans, because I know they're not going to rush. Because what I don't want is if I say that first line and I've put no comedy, I've given no clue to where it comes from in the monologue or the opening, and then they put on something. They're the second person to come out and they put on some unusual thing. Because then I think, hey, I stepped out here first and set the scene. You didn't give me a chance to give us the path. And there's some schools of thought that will say, what's wrong with, I disagree with you. What's wrong with that second person? Why'd you have to write the scene, the first person coming out there? Well, I did step out first. So as your ensemble member, give me a chance, or I'm going to be bitter about that later. You step out first next time, and then I'll give you a chance to get out your idea. It will create better ensemble down the road. Or it'll make me, and if we don't do it that way, it'll make me always rush to the comedy and not be natural. You follow that?
I totally follow
So
that.
if I feel like I gotta just cram my game in there in one breath in that first sentence, or Tommy be funny, he's gonna come out here and just do some wild character, and I'll never be able to get to what I got from the opening, because I believe ultimately we're all listening to the opening together, us and the audience. We're all enjoying it together. So let's all bring our ideas from that same basket, not from our individual heads or from some random place that comes from you bouncing off me just setting up a who, what, where. So you're forcing a organic scene based on me just taking a breath at the start of the scene. It's like, dude, I had a good premise and now you're just going off on my object work or whatever. I find that annoying, and I don't trust that person. But that's back in Chicago. There were literally where you were told the opposite of that. So you'd go to class at one place and you'd think you were hearing, when you begin, you just feel like there's one way to do improv, and I can listen to everybody, and I can go on Reddit and ask a question, and everyone's going to chime in and all their answers together are right. It's like, well, you got to pick a path at some point. And I know a lot of people say, well, I take a little bit of this and a little bit of that. I don't know how you do that. You can take a lot of good smaller specifics and techniques from different schools, I guess. But eventually, in my opinion, the group that's on stage all need to be in the same mindset of how they're going about their improv. Or I think there's going to be bitterness. And that does happen. That is what happens. And that's why eventually a group will go, Tommy Be Funny, he's got to go. And then Tommy Be Funny finds his own group where they all like to improvise like that. And guess what? That group gets popular too, and they have their own thing. And fine, that's how their cookie crumbles. But that's not what I would. That's not what I sought out, and I think that is how it evolves.
Well, of course, I have to bring up Improv for Humans. It's your podcast, and it is absolutely wonderful and has really grown over the years. Talk to us about how Improv for Humans came about.
I can't remember what year we started, but whatever year it was, it was over a decade ago. But Scott Ackerman said the word to me, and I didn't know what the word was. Podcast. And he said probably something like you should do like an Ask Cat. Or he might have had some other thing, but then I was like, I would like to do an Ask Cat version of that show for the air. And just to be honest, I also thought to myself, now I can finally cosplay Howard Stern as I wanted to do my whole life. And I think if you listen to early seasons of Improv for Humans, it was a mix of Ask Cat and Howard Stern, for good and for bad. But I think eventually I just focused on the improv, and it did become Ask Cat for Your Ears. But the format is simple. We tell a story, do a scene, rinse and repeat. And as you know, sometimes we'll use YouTube videos, or we'll have guest musicians, or and we take suggestions and all sorts of different ways to be inspired. But it is just very basic, some kind of opening to squeeze some funny out, and then we do a long form scene.
Can you recall any fond moments in particular that you've had on the show?
It's the fondest day of the week for sure, especially now that sitcom work is so sparse. But we just recorded an episode where I had the guys over to my house. We had some musicians we've had on before, Michael Dean Dameron and Micah Schnabel, and I was laughing my ass off. I had possibly a few too many Jack and Cokes, and you can tell that at the beginning of the episode, but which is very unlike me. Not a drinker. But the music made me want to drink Jack and Coke. But that's very recent. That's only a week ago. That's a very fond memory. I don't know. Something I haven't done in a while, and we're about to do a new one, and I won't say what it is, but our concept episodes. And I did a string of them with this guy, Armin Weitzman. I got reminded of one we did. We did a Whiplash episode, like parodying that movie Whiplash, where the teacher and the student of the drummer, and he's like an abusive teacher. And I did the same thing as an improv teacher with Armin. I loved those concept episodes. So, but what I really love is the different pairings. I don't just, it's not completely random who's on the show. I try to pair people according to how they either what their comedy is, how they bounce off each other. Some people are best friends. Some people are just really, they're not necessarily, they may not even know each other, but they just are really good with each other. So it's fun for me as the curator, producer of the show to match people and hear the success. I get giddy on the show when we find the game in the scene. That's when I find joy, is that moment in the scene where you're like, there it is. Let's ride that wave. I guess, there we go with the analogy again. It is like, I've never surfed, but I will use the surfing analogy. I will catch the wave. I've used waves way too much in answering my question today, but yeah, it's it is my weekly, at least, thing. So it's funny even to say fondest memory when it's like a weekly job.
Well, Matt, I've got one more question for you, my friend. And just so you know, this question can apply to anything you want it to. What's the one piece of advice that has served you well that you'd want everyone else to hear?
Like, I've had a couple of mentors in my life. And when you ask the question, of course, I go to Del Close in my head, and I go to Steve Albini, who recently passed away. But you'd have to go back to mommy, with fake it till you make it. And when you just don't, you fucking hate the person, but you have to deal with them. Sometimes you gotta fake it till you make it. And I don't follow that advice enough, but she is on my shoulders constantly trying. She passed away, but she's still there trying to get me through with that one.
A mom's job is never done. Well, Matt, I really want to thank you for being here today on Improv and Magic. I appreciate your time, and I wish you all the best, my friend.
All right. I've had a really good time. And yeah, go to improvforhumans.com. It's a free podcast, but we also have a subscription where I have a lot of side podcasts that get into the nitty gritty of the craft, which I can obviously talk about ad nauseum. But thanks for having me on to do that and spin analogies.
Thank you so much, Matt. Never underestimate good old advice from mom. Fake it till you make it. Certainly a great piece of advice. A really big thank you to Matt Besser for joining me today. Thanks for all the great tips and sharing your honest thoughts. If you haven't yet, I encourage you all to check out Improv for Humans. You'll be really happy you did. Visit improvforhumans.com. That's improv4humans.com. Thanks, my friends, for tuning into this episode of Improv and Magic. I hope you had fun listening today. If you enjoyed the show, please take a moment to rate and review. Your feedback really helps us bring even more magical moments and great improv to you. And if you're listening on Spotify, don't forget to leave a comment and let me know what you think. Have a great day, my friends, and stay tuned for more exciting episodes. Until next time, I'm LD Madera. You are who you are, and you are special.